Turning our attention back to the special election in New York's 26th congressional district, my next guest played a key role in the selection of Assemblywoman Jane Corwin to be the GOP nominee. He is Erie County Republican Chairman Nick Langworthy. Chairman, thanks for your time. Good to see you.
Oh, thanks for having me, Liz.
So this was sort of a little bit of a foregone conclusion. I mean, it seemed to me that the Assemblywoman was the front runner from the get-go, although there were 7 other candidates who were interviewed by the leaders. So what made Jane Corwin stand out?
Well, we were really dedicated from the outset, and there was no foregone conclusions. I mean, Jane worked her way through a process which ultimately had roughly 15 candidates considered or mentioned, but it was a collaborative 7-county effort, and the final round was held last Sunday. We were looking for a candidate that we thought would be able to represent all 7 counties of the congressional district very well. Jane Corwin's assembly district has been somewhat of a microcosm of the congressional district, having urban areas like the city of Lockport, as well as suburban areas like Clarence, but then also rural areas like Marilla and Elma. So she's already been in that sort of environment. She brought incredible conservative credentials, scoring the 2nd highest ranking from the Conservative Party out of the entire state legislature. So we were very impressed with what she brought to the table, and she rose to the top during the process.
Okay, there are 2 things here. Regarding her conservative credentials, there is a movement afoot to try and discredit that, of course, not surprisingly, by some of the Republicans who were passed over for the nod. There's a question about her 2008 Project Vote Smart survey, in which she expressed support for abortion rights in the first trimester, the first 3 months of a woman's pregnancy. Does this not call into question her conservative credentials for you?
Well, her voting record is what has earned her the 2nd highest ranking from the Conservative Party and the endorsement of the Conservative Party both times she's run.
Right.
Jane Corwin is opposed to partial birth abortion. Jane Corwin opposes federal funding for abortion, and Jane Corwin supports parental notification measures at the federal level. In the interview process, Jane Corwin mentioned that she would have joined with congressional Republicans to vote to strip funding from Planned Parenthood. Jane Corwin has an identical position on this issue to the outgoing Congressman Chris Lee, which was one that was also endorsed by the Conservative Party and conservatives across the district. So I don't believe that there's anything to call into question. Is she 100% pro-life? No, she's not. But I believe her voting record in the Assembly speaks for itself.
Here's the problem, though. I mean, of course, everybody's mindful in your party of what happened in New York 23, when you had a situation where initially the GOP candidate was the Assemblywoman Didi Skazafava, and the conservatives did not go along with that. They considered her not conservative enough, and they ended up going with Doug Hoffman, creating a path of victory for Bill Owens. And there's a lot of details that we don't need to get into. However, in this situation,
certainly,
you've got the Tea Partiers who are agitating, it looks like, for David Belavia, and then you've got, you know, the conservatives getting bombarded with candidates who are hoping to get the conservative line.
I believe that at the end of the day, Jane Corwin will be endorsed by the Conservative Party. I have not spoken to Chairman Long, who ultimately makes the decision. I have spoken to our local chairs, in particularly Ralph Larigo here in Erie County, and he's a supporter of Jane Corwin's. You know, Jane Corwin is not Didi Skazafava. Didi Skazafava was a liberal Republican. She supported card check on union measures. She supported cap and trade. She supported all elements of abortion. She supported gay marriage. Jane Corwin is not Didi Skazafava. This is an apples and oranges scenario. I believe that at the end of the day, Jane Corwin will carry the Conservative Party banner as well as the Republican and probably the Independence Party as well.
Okay, so but for what we don't know yet is when Governor Andrew Cuomo might actually call a special election, and it seems to me that there's this waiting game going on the other side for the Democrats, because they'd like to see if there is in fact a strong third-party candidate who comes out, because if there is a split, and I've been hearing about a poll that's floating around out there that shows that the Erie County Clerk, Kathy Hochul, would be quite competitive if there was more than one candidate who actually had some money and maybe some traction. So what do you make of that?
Well, I believe that Kathy Hochul is their candidate until Kathy Hochul says she's not the candidate. She's really their top prospect for all offices that are up this year, including this special election for Congress, and running against our county executive, Chris Collins, who's a strong candidate for re-election.
Right.
The Democrats are reliant on the national Democrats who have been in town consistently telling them who they should nominate for the office. We are very proud to just come through a process where the 7 counties in a completely local manner nominated our own candidate for Congress, and that's Jane Corwin. We did not have a seat at the table for Albany officials or for Washington. It's a Western New York driven process that we're proud to have completed.
Okay, so how much of this had to do with money then and the ability of Jane Corwin to self-fund?
Well, as I mentioned last night when we made the announcement, much from the media has been made about the fact that she's independently wealthy. I'll tell you, 4 of our candidates are millionaires that interviewed for the office. So Jane Corwin's one of those people that just said that she would commit some of her own resources to the race. She didn't put a figure on the table. Jack Davis, on the other hand, said that he was willing to spend $3 million to start the race. It wasn't the dollar figures alone that changed the minds of any of the Republican officials in the room. We were looking for the best candidate to win the race. I believe there's going to be huge investment from the donor communities in Buffalo and Rochester behind a solid conservative message like Jane Corwin's. And she's going to rely on normal fundraising mechanisms in order to get her message out. However, like Chris Lee, she may have to spend some of her own money to get elected. It is a tough and expensive district with 2 expensive media markets in Buffalo, Rochester. 60% of the district falls in the Buffalo market, 40% falls into Rochester. It's not one where you can pick or choose which markets you play in.
Has she, Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt you, just curious, in the interview process, did the Assemblywoman tell you and commit to the chairs that she would be willing to fight for this district, and even if the district doesn't exist in 2012, will she run against a person like Higgins or maybe Slaughter or whoever else might be in that district? Will she be willing to do that?
I mean, we didn't get into too many theoreticals of the politics of 2012. We're focused on the politics of 2011 and winning the seat.
Well, sure,
I believe that Jane Corwin...
If the district doesn't exist, Chairman, if the district doesn't exist anymore, then what's the point of holding the seat?
Well, and that is why we want a strong incumbent like Jane Corwin we want her to be elected, become an incumbent that's strong and can establish a voting record for herself in Washington, and then make the case to the officials in Albany that it will cut the deals on the maps, that she is deserving of a great district and that this district is preserved. I mean, it's certainly something that I am focused wholly on, is to preserving a Republican congressional district that contains a portion of Erie County.
And how much do you think it'll cost in the end, this special election? Or do you have any idea about a dollar amount?
I mean, I have managed campaigns in this district in 06 and 08, and they were both very expensive.
Right.
I believe that this race probably costs between $2 and $2.5 million for the Republican candidate. So fundraising needs to start right away.
Right.
And we need to get moving. I mean, that's why it was urgent to move ahead with the timeline. Every time someone puts a microphone in my face, I'm going to call on the governor to call this special election as soon as possible. The governor has no reason to delay. Once the Democrats pick their candidate, we should move ahead and have this election at the earliest possible date, because the 7 counties of Western New York are currently without a representative in the halls of Congress.
Well, you just put your money where your mouth is there, Chairman, because you have a microphone and you just called on the governor to do just that. I mean, but why should he even wait for the Democrats to pick a candidate? Technically speaking, he could just call the special election whenever he wanted to. What's the holdup, do you think?
I would hope that I expect that he's waiting for the Democrats to get their house in order. They probably will do so in short order. And I really ask him to do this at the earliest possible date. We cannot afford in this region to not be represented like the people of the Southern Tier and the people of Rochester were not last year during the time that Eric Massa had left Congress. The special election was not called until General Election Day. There is far too much going on in the halls of Congress right now to not have a seat at the table for such a pivotal region in our state. So
at the end of the day, though, do you actually believe that it's possible that the Tea Party folks will get on board with you guys and that you'll all have a moment, a peace peaceful moment together to coalesce behind someone, or are you going to end up with an independent candidate, maybe like a Jack Davis or maybe like a David Belavia or whoever else might be out there?
Well, Jack Davis basically disqualified himself during our process by saying that he was going to pursue the Democratic line if we didn't give him ours. So he is going to talk to anyone that could possibly give him ballot access. Jack is, he did not perform well for the Republican chairs. So I'm not sure what his plans will be. David Belavia, we definitely salute his service. We did not ultimately select him. We hope that he will join forces with the Republican Party as he has in the past and help us win this important election. He has not told me what his intentions are. I have not spoken to him since we had made our decision. I haven't spoken to him since Sunday. But I think he's got a lot to offer, and that we should be working together. Much is made about the Tea Party because there's one particular person doing interviews saying that there's going to be this third-party candidacy. David Belavia has not said that he will. People are speaking for him. But, there are others in the Tea Party movement that are supportive of Jane Corwin's candidacy because they know that she's a real conservative and she wants to go to Washington and fight against the runaway spending and debt. No more prominent than Carl Palladino. He's a strong supporter of Jane Corwin's in this race, and, he is going to offer his support. We have Len Roberto, who founded a group called Primary Challenge, and he's offered his support to Jane Corwin also in this race. So, there's people all over the Buffalo area. I mean, like much of the politics of Western New York, there's disagreement. There's a lot of disagreement also within Tea Party ranks. But I respect the members of the Tea Party. I think that they did a patriotic duty by getting involved, and we ran in Erie County last year many Tea Party related candidates like Len Roberto for Congress against Brian Higgins, like Jill Rowland against Louise Slaughter, and no more prominent than Carl Palladino for governor.
Well, Chairman, I want to thank you for keeping things interesting in Western New York because there is no lack of things to cover out there, and I also want to thank you for your time. Nick Langworthy, it's great to see you. Thanks.
Thanks, Liz.